Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS in a partnership with Vertical Magazine. In this two-part series, Ronnie Reese and I sit down with Nelson Reithmaier, the Chief of Maintenance for Pasco County Mosquito Control in Florida. During the conversation, we explore Nelson's extensive background in aviation, particularly in his time in the Coast Guard, where he worked as an aviation maintenance technician. The discussion delves into the challenges of maintaining aircraft in corrosive environments and the training and selection process for Coast Guard aviation. We get an opportunity to discuss the unique considerations and challenges that come with Nelson's current role as the Aviation Chief of Maintenance for Pasco County in Florida. Nelson shares his insights on the operational strategies employed during hurricanes, the importance of maintaining aircraft for public health missions, and the technology used in mosquito eradication. The discussion also highlights community engagement efforts and the significance of networking through conferences like the upcoming Vertical MRO Conference and regional fly-ins.
Special thanks to our sponsors for this podcast.
Safe Structure Designs.
Robinson Helicopter Company.
Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS.
All right, everyone, you're ready to contact. You're cleared to the Bravo.
The Vertical MRO Podcast explores the fascinating world of helicopter maintenance, repair, and overhaul with your host, Val Medved.
Now, line altimeter 3029, approved as requested.
The podcast features helicopter technicians, mechanics, engineers, and MRO experts who share invaluable industry insight, knowledge, and stories that will inspire current and aspiring industry maintainers.
Hey, welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast. I'm today's host, John Gray. I have an awesome conversation in store for today. One that on the Hangar Z podcast we've had quite a few times in the past. Folks that are doing this mission set that I guess Nelson is a part of. It's mosquito control, and it interests me for quite a few reasons. You know, I think about Florida and that area and what that area would be like if it weren't for agencies like the one that Nelson works for, and you think about the size of bugs and mosquitoes that potentially would exist would be insane. And I laugh about pterodactyls coming back to life in the form of a mosquito. That's 100% possible. So honored to have the conversation on the MRO podcast today. With us to host the conversation is Ronnie Reese. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, and excited to talk with Nelson today.
Yeah. Yes. For those of us, or for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that Ronnie and I are twinsies today, wearing our Vertical MRO conference shirts. So happy to see we're color coordinated, and excited to talk about the Vertical MRO conference that's upcoming as part of this podcast as we go. So to have the conversation that I'm describing, I'd like to welcome our guest Nelson on the I almost said the Hangar Z podcast, but the Vertical MRO podcast. Nelson, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, John?
Excellent. Yeah, it's an honor to meet you, and thank you for all your support.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. If you could, just give us a snapshot of your background, how you got into the position you're now, and what inspired you to get into aviation.
So I've got 14 years active duty Coast Guard. I was an aviation maintenance technician working on HH-60Js, Jayhawks. While I was in the Coast Guard, I was also a flight mechanic, working as part of the crew in the back of the helicopter, helped facilitate rescues, searches, had a great time doing that. After I left the Coast Guard, I then became I worked for Part 145 organization, working on commercial aircraft. I taught aviation and power plant technicians, did that for several years. That was a great opportunity. I also worked HEMS, helicopter emergency medical operations, and now I'm here as the chief of maintenance for Pasco County Mosquito.
Very cool.
So really enjoying it.
It's funny when you talk about your career, you just went over it in about 30 seconds, but there's so many stories that are wound through that career that I want to dig into. One of which you talk about the Coast Guard, and it's a really timely conversation we're having, because the last episode of the Vertical MRO podcast was Val talking with Jason Quinn from the Real Rescue podcast. And he was a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, and he talked at length about hoists and hoist maintenance and what that world looked like. From his perspective, was a lot different, being that he was a rescue swimmer. He did have some responsibilities for maintenance, but from your perspective, when you think back on your time, did you have any involvement operating or maintaining the hoist systems on those aircraft?
So as an aviation maintenance technician, I did maintain the hoist. For the most part, what we did was ensuring that the cable was in good condition, the hoist hook was in good condition, replacing cable as necessary. And if there was a larger issue with the hoist, we would just take it off, send it out to depot, and install a new hoist. I did listen to that last podcast, and I feel left out. You know, they were out ice fishing and cod punch fish and everything. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm having my podcast right here in my office.
And you were saying that you listened to the Hangar Z for quite a while now. Have you? What got you into listening to podcasts?
I don't remember. I just found it one day looking through Spotify or whatever it was, and because I was looking for a helicopter related podcast, and lo and behold, I found that, and some great stories that on there. You know, also there's a lot about the HEMS as well as the law enforcement aspect.
Yeah, it's been really interesting as the podcast community surrounding the helicopter segment's grown. I think it really highlights the good work that's being done in the helicopter community as a whole. Really proud to be a part of that. And, you know, what I noticed on the Hangar Z side was a lot of the maintenance side, while we covered it occasionally, wasn't getting the attention it deserved. So the Vertical MRO podcast came as a result of that. And it's been really cool talking to folks like you on, you know, what it's like to maintain aircraft that are completing these really cool mission sets in public safety aviation and just the helicopter community as a whole. You know, going back to your Coast Guard experience, you think about the I'll call it a caustic environment that most Coast Guard aircraft are operating in. You know, I would imagine corrosion and all the things that surround operating in those extreme environments made your job a bit challenging at times.
Oh, it definitely does. The when we're doing hoists in the Jayhawk, typically you would be completing a hoist at 40 feet. So your rotor wash, it's kicking up all that salt air, you know, as you're bringing the swimmer or survivors in and out of the cabin. You're getting all that salt water inside the cabin. So it was definitely a very corrosive environment, and we spent a lot of time trying to mitigate those effects.
I've seen videos of Coast Guard aircraft returning to base and flying through, I think what they call a bird bath. Did you guys have one of those? And what was that? Can you kind of go through that a little bit?
So I was stationed here in Clearwater for several years, and we had a bird bath there. And actually it was primarily for the C-130s that were stationed there. So after they would do their low passes and drops, they would go through the bird bath, and we would use it as well. And it was on the ramp, you had these two poles with cantilevered arms that would come out, and sprayers up underneath, sprayers up top, turn on the water, and just taxi right through and help get a lot of that salt off the airframe and off the rotor blades and whatnot.
That's cool. So, did you run through it yourself?
I did not run through that myself.
I could see a hot summer day in Florida wanting to run through something like that. I don't know if it'd be fun or not. It seems like a good idea, but I have no idea how much water pressure is involved in one of those things.
I don't know. Get the slip and slide out and go through it. That would have been a hell of a morale day. Again, on the theme of the Coast Guard, what were some of the aspects of the Coast Guard that you enjoyed the most? The biggest thing was just knowing that we were going to be helping someone at some point. Whether you're performing maintenance or you're out crewing, you were going to be having a positive effect on someone's life.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of also a unique part of Coast Guard aviation is we only have 3 rates in the Coast Guard. You've got an aviation maintenance technician, avionics and electrical technician, and then you have your ASTs, your aviation survival technicians. And as an AMT, I was essentially an A&P, unlike the other branches where you have all different specialists. Yeah, and I know I would joke with my students, in the Air Force, they've got a guy that'll turn the screwdriver to the right, and you've got a guy that'll turn the screwdriver to the left. They're so specialized. And that would make a lot of guys upset, but I don't mind hurting feelings.
And a different person to write the manuals for each one of those too, right?
Oh, definitely.
Part of the culture that I love about the military is how you guys earn the rights to bag on each other. It's fun as a spectator to hear.
Oh, definitely. And as far as the aviation side as well, we were very generalized. When we go through school, you're learning about fixed wing aircraft, you're learning about rotary wing aircraft, because they didn't know where you were going to go. So that was a lot of fun. And then everyone had to be qualified on the airframe that they were assigned to as an aircrew member. So for the H-60s, you start out as a basic aircrew member, running radios, helping out with the pilots and their workload. And then you can upgrade to become a flight mechanic, operating the hoists, going out and search and rescues and whatnot. If you're on the fixed wing side, say C-130s, they had flight engineers, you had your load masters, drop masters, sensor system operators. So everyone had to be qualified as an aircrew member on the aircraft. So that was very unique. You knew that the work that you were doing on your aircraft as a maintainer, directly affected, not only the mission, but also you as well. You wanted to make sure that you did the best job possible for the safety of that aircraft, the airworthiness of that aircraft. So it was a great experience.
Really cool. You get to operate as an aircrew member first, and then kind of go from there. Can you back up to the initial training that you went through and talk about how you selected or were selected to the aircraft that you were ultimately assigned to?
Well, I'll kind of back up a little bit, because originally I was in the Army, and I was a military police. And I quickly realized that was not what I wanted to be. I thought it was going to be like Boy Scouts with guns. And no, I was doing I was assigned to a combat MP unit. So we were doing a lot of gate duty and whatnot, and, out in the mud and everything. And I said, okay. I had a sergeant that said, if I had to do it all over again, I joined the Coast Guard or the Air Force. I was like, you're a smart man. I'm going to go do that. So I went to the Coast Guard recruiter and I said, I want to work on aircraft. And he's like, you're in. I probably met his quota for the year.
When you reflect on your youth, were you kind of mechanically inclined as a young kid, and like, how did you identify, if you were, that you wanted to start working on what, in this case, aircraft?
Yeah, I'd say that I was mechanically inclined. I was always fiddling with bicycles and everything, trying to get them to, work a little bit better, make sure the gears shifted a little bit smoother, all that. And then when I was a teenager in my first car, you have to be mechanically inclined. I had no money. I had a beater. So
what was your first car?
It was a 1985 Mustang LX. No, it was a four-cylinder, four-speed manual transmission. Yeah, you're lucky to hit highway speeds going downhill with the tailwind.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Most kids are in a situation when they get their first car, they're fixing it almost after every drive. Ronnie, for you, I think I've asked you this before, but I don't remember your answer. What was your first car?
A 1990 Ford Escort. So very much the same way.
Did you have crank windows?
Crank windows, manual locks, like everything was manual on that thing except for the transmission, which was automatic. Yet I think we had to replace that transmission like 3 times just because it was just fix or repair daily.
Yeah, that's it.
Nelson, did anybody in your family, were they mechanically inclined to kind of teach you your way? Were you holding the flashlight for your dad at some point, or what'd that look like?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Oh yes, yeah. My dad, he was mechanically inclined. He worked on the cars. He actually had been a carpenter working for a sailboat manufacturer back when he was younger. And he learned a lot from his dad. And my grandfather was actually a aerospace engineer.
Oh, cool.
He worked for a lot of the big companies from World War II on through the 80s. Designing fighter jets. He worked on the Apollo program. He worked on the space shuttle program. He worked for Lockheed on the L-1011, their last big commercial aircraft. He was also a private pilot. He was a CFI. He was also an A&P.
Jeez.
So, I wish that when he was alive, I was more cognizant of everything.
Yeah.
And could have asked him, more stories.
Right.
I would visit him when I was a kid and everything. And I was aware, but I never really, I don't know the right term, but I just didn't know to ask him, about his experiences.
Didn't have the perspective to understand how significant that was. When you think about that generation, what they accomplished with rudimentary math, a lot of the technology they had was nowhere close to what we have today, but they accomplished these huge feats, with what they did have. Mm-hmm. I'm always really impressed to talk and learn about that generation and the ones that preceded them, knowing, what tools they had at their disposal to create such awesome things,
Yeah.
But cool that you had those influences as a kid that ultimately led you to where you are. So you go to the Army, you're an MP there, and then you go to the Coast Guard, and then go back to the selection, how you're selected to your aircraft once you get through your initial training.
So after you go through, and I don't know if it's still this way, but I was able to get orders for school, which is unusual for the Coast Guard. Usually you go in as a non-raid and you're assigned to a cutter or a small boat unit, and you just spend a couple years doing all sorts of different things that either on the boat or at the small boat unit, and learning about the different rates, and then you put in for whatever you want after that. Well, I got my orders, and I was able to go to Air Station Clearwater first to the airman program there, and you spend 4 months there learning about aviation. So you visit the AMTs, the AETs, the ASTs, you learn ground handling, you go on a few flights, and you help out a little bit with maintenance, just kind of see what it's like. And also they feel you out, are you going to be a good fit for aviation? And then you go off to school, and once you graduate and you get your orders to go to whatever air station it is, you might go to one that only has, say, helicopters, and such as Air Station Los Angeles or something. So you go in there, you're going to be on H-65s or the Dolphins. If you go to Clearwater, you show up, and you don't know if you're going to be on H-60s or if you're going to be on C-130s. Now they've got the C-27 Spartans. But you talk to your leading chief, and your leading chief will say, I have a need for you on fixed wing, or I've got a need for you on rotary wing, and he could either place you like that, or if he's feeling generous, what do you want? I've got an opening on both sides. You want to be helicopters, or do you want to go to the dark side and you want to go fixed wing?
That's really cool. It's, obviously having the choice is great. And I could see, going to an air station where there's only helicopters, it's obvious you're going to be doing just that. But it's cool. I'd be curious to see, of the folks that go to an air station where there are multiple platforms, was there a trend that you saw as far as, people wanting airplanes over or fixed wing over helicopters or vice versa?
I don't know if there's much of a trend, just kind of what they thought was cooler, I guess.
Yeah.
I thought that the helicopters were a lot cooler.
Yeah, you're right.
That was one of the things that my grandfather, after I, was assigned to the helicopters, I was talking to my grandpa, and he's like, "Why don't you work on, real aircraft?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Fixed wing?" Like, "Oh, no, I like the swing wing stuff."
Did you give him the Sikorsky quote? When you need a rescue, the C-130 can fly over you, but only the helicopters can save you.
I didn't know that at the time, but yeah, I probably should have.
Well, really cool that you got that experience. When you look back over the course of your career to date, you've worked on a lot of different aircraft. Is there one that kind of sticks out as one that you're most inclined or excited to work on?
Yeah, I've worked on, like I said, the H-60s. I've done a little bit on C-130s, A320s, a bunch of different general aviation aircraft, Cessnas, Pipers, Blanca, Lear. I've worked on the EC-140, 135s, I'm sorry, and then now the H-125s. And, I don't know if it's nostalgia or whatever, but, the Jayhawk is always going to have a little special place in my heart.
Yep. People talk about the design of these aircrafts, and a lot of times it seems as though the design doesn't have the maintainer in mind. You felt like the Jayhawk had the maintainer in mind when they developed that aircraft, and its easeability for maintainers to get in and do what needs to be done?
It definitely did in some aspects, because it was originally designed for the Army and to be maintained out in the field. So something as like removing the engine, they had thought about the placement of the engine mounts, and once you got the high speed shaft unhooked and everything, you could actually just kind of rock it back on those mounts and then be able to lift it out, fairly easily out in the field. Now, with the Coast Guard's Jayhawk, we had stuffed a lot more things into it, a lot more avionics and whatnot. So, it was not as easy to maintain in some situations. But, like I said, it's just that nostalgia, I guess, that I miss that aircraft.
Yeah. A lot of fire agencies are going to the Firehawks now.
Yes.
And after hearing you talk about that, I wonder if part of the selection process for a lot of these agencies is exactly what you're saying, for the ability to in the field, be able to do an engine swap or something like that. Because you think about these fire campaigns, and you're a lot of times out in the middle of nowhere, and you're having to do some pretty heavy maintenance. And it can be difficult if you don't have an aircraft that is kind of set up from the beginning to operate like that in the field. Any insights there from you, Nelson, on that?
Well, yeah, the basic Blackhawk airframe that Jayhawk is based on, it is definitely designed for, working out in the field. We had some instances, and I wasn't part of it, but out of Clearwater, we had a mission called OPBAT, Operation Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, where we would maintain a presence down in the Caribbean 365 days a year. We had a couple different airfacts, and we would fly drug enforcement agents and Bahamian drug enforcement officials around looking for drug runners. Well, there was a couple times where they had lost an engine or whatever it might have been and landed on a remote beach somewhere. And, they're out there, with portable hand cranked crane and, changing out the engine or, blade or whatever it might have been, maybe 10 or 15 feet of white sand waiting for the tide to come in.
Not what most people consider to be a beach vacation, huh?
No, not at all.
There are worse places I could think of being. You know,
Yeah.
One of our recent interviews, we were talking to someone who's working in the Arctic, and he was talking about a bear encounter that he had working on an aircraft and having to climb in the tail of the helicopter to escape from the bear. So I'd much rather be in Florida on a white sandy beach, not trying to escape bears.
Are you a water guide, Nelson? Do you enjoy being out in the coastal locations?
I do. You know, that was one thing when I was growing up. I had a small sailboat and whatnot. Now I'm not as much of a water person, but you know, I don't mind being near water. But then again, you know, I love the mountains and whatnot. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind going, you know, a little bit more inland either. It's getting too crowded here.
To jump ahead a bit, can you talk about the county you work for, kind of where it's situated within Florida?
Sure. So Pasco County Mosquito Control District is actually a special taxing district. So we are not part of the county itself. We have our own board members that are elected, and we can impose a millage rate on the residents to help fund the district. As far as the location of Pasco County, we are just north of Hillsborough, which is where Tampa is. So a lot of people know where Tampa is. We have the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You know, we are so that's centrally located on the west coast of Florida. We are just the county north of them. You know, I believe that there's about 600,000 people in our county. I couldn't tell you how large it is. I know that we do treat a lot of area, though.
What's always interesting, and I'm going to detour here for a second. When I talk to folks that work for agencies in Florida, what intrigues me is the amount of preparation that goes into hurricane season. And you all have a plan that you put in place every year, a lot of planning meetings that go into that. As the director of maintenance or chief of maintenance for your agency, can you kind of give us an idea what your responsibilities are in that role as far as preparation goes for hurricane season, and what some of the contingencies are that you put in place? Safe Structure Designs offers creative, customizable ergonomic safety solutions with over 20 years of experience. Their custom design process is free, ensuring safety and efficiency. Let them create your ideal solution. Visit www.safe-2.com. That's www.safe-2.com for more information.
So that's a great question. We do have our hurricane plan. We meet with emergency management officials from the county, from the state, federal as well, and you know, we will actually provide post hurricane assistance as needed. We actually have airboats. So the last hurricanes that came through here, we used the airboats to help effect some rescues of residents, which was, you know, great. We used the helicopters to help do damage assessments as well. As far as for our aircraft, we, depending on the proposed strength of the hurricane and its path, we will usually either take the blades off the helicopters, and then we have our chemical warehouse that's built to withstand like 150 knot winds. We'll actually move our one of our helicopters in there, or we'll fly it out of the county somewhere outside of the path and just forward stage it somewhere else. Last year we flew one helicopter up to northern Florida. Yeah, to stay out of the path.
One of the situations where you're considering taking the aircraft out of the county, like you said, into northern Florida or Alabama or wherever you might go, can you talk about your, I'll call it a go bag, but the things that you kind of put together, the essential supplies that you put together for that flight? Because, you know, I guess in my mind, you don't know how long you're going to be gone, right? So how do you kind of prepare for that, and what do you take?
So I've before we sent the aircraft out, I went ahead and made a kit. I had started with the MDL, paper copy of the maintenance due list. Made sure that there was oil, hydraulic fluid, all of that available. A church key to go along with those, and the tie downs and everything else that were needed for the aircraft. As far as tooling, didn't really worry about that. Where my pilot flew to, I knew that they had tooling there if it was needed.
Yeah.
So it was a hangar that he has gone to before and worked with people there several times.
A lot of folks I know, have invested, let's just say $100,000 in their tools, and I think the first thing they're going to evacuate is their toolkit, their toolbox. Can you talk about that side of things for you?
Pretty much, I just cover it with a tarp and hope for the best. I'm not much of a tool snob. I love my tools, but I don't have the Snap-on box with Snap-on everything or the Matco. I just I've got a mix of everything. I've got Husky. I've got Icon from Harbor Freight. Whatever's going to work.
Yeah. Do you still miss your 10 millimeter socket every once in a while?
I've got a good supply of them just in case.
Is there a story for that 10 millimeter socket, Ronnie?
Oh, it's just the most lost socket known to man. Everybody always looks for a 10 millimeter. And it's never there when you need it.
On the topic of tools, this is one of the questions I like to ask. As far as your toolkit, is there one tool that you would say is absolutely essential that you wouldn't leave home without?
Ooh, honestly, it'd probably be my Leatherman. Leatherman and my flashlight. I keep those on me at all the time, because you never know, you'll be just walking around and loose screw or a loose Zeus fastener or whatever it might be, and you can just quickly take care of something, or if you want it, you see something else and just want to inspect further, you got your flashlight, are essential to me.
When you started your career, we're using like the 2-foot long mag light, and now it's the small little LED one now. Have you seen that transition happen?
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember my aunt had actually gotten me one of the mini mags, and I thought that was so great. Just keep that in my pocket. And now it's like, especially with these old eyes, I'm like, I don't know if I'd be able to see anything.
It's funny in law enforcement. When I was brand new, it was the D-cell battery mag lights like you're talking about, and you could shove it under your arm when you're out writing paperwork in the dark. You could shove it under your arm and you could hold it there and allow you to see as you're writing. Well, as the flashlights got smaller, it became harder and harder to do that, right? Like the lights are great, but it was really hard to balance it. So that was a kind of an unintended consequence, I think, of those things becoming miniaturized. But man, the power and the battery life in those lights are outstanding. I love those.
Now you get the questions from the dentist. Are you doing anything unusual to your teeth as you're holding the flashlight in your mouth, trying to figure out what you're reading?
I tell you what, after I started working at the Part 145, that's where I was introduced to headlights. And, ever since then, I keep one of those in my toolbox. And I'm like, how did I ever work on airplanes before a headlamp?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's gold. I think, you talk about our dads, and that's something that they didn't have access to most of them. That's how we got the job of holding the flashlight. So I think today's kids don't have the same benefit of holding their dad and getting yelled at. But going back to the topic of tools, Leatherman tool is still my favorite. It's a staple in our household. We've got a Leatherman in every car, and our side by side. We make sure that we have it around us all the time, because, like you said, you never know when you need it. I remember graduating from the fire academy. Somebody gave me a Leatherman as my graduation gift, which was really cool. And I actually had it until this last year. I was in an airport and I forgot to take it out of my backpack, and TSA came across it and I had to throw it away. I was so bummed, to throw that thing away. it's been by my side in a lot of interesting places. So it was kind of heartbreaking to get rid of that. Ronnie, for you and your toolbox, what would you say is the most important can't do without tool?
The multi screwdriver, right, where it has the Phillips and the square. I mean, all the different ones that you need right then and there. But there's always the wrong size that you're going to strip your screw on every single time. And so it's like those Robertson screws, like in some of those international ones, they have it right. I'm tired of stripping screws.
Well, Nelson, going back to you and in your role with Pasco County, can you talk about, I think we all have a general idea of what your role is, but can you talk about some of the nuances that's involved in your position with the agency you work for?
Sure. So as the aviation chief of maintenance, I'm essentially the director of maintenance here, and I'm also the sole technician. We've got 2 birds, and my job is just to make sure that those birds are ready to go anytime that my pilots need to go out and do treatments and ensure that they're airworthy. So working in concert with both my pilots, we have 2 pilots, just ensure that we are ready to go. All the inspections are done, and that the spray systems are ready to go. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of challenge, learning the aircraft. And the other part of it is kind of working with my director of aviation. We sit down, make the budget, and trying to ensure that we're also being good stewards to the taxpayer money that we have.
Yeah.
So that's another big part of it.
Yeah.
And you're flying 2 H125s from Airbus, right?
That's correct. They are both newer aircraft. They purchased them back in 2020.
I retired from Ontario Police Department in Southern California, and we had 3 H125s, and our maintainers loved the 125s. I remember them talking about the ease of access. They felt like a lot of the design in the 125 was built with the maintainer in mind. Is that something that you would echo, or what's your kind of thought as a maintainer?
Definitely very easy aircraft to work on. Having worked on the EC-135s, the German-built helicopters, I can definitely say that these are a little bit more maintainer-friendly than those were.
What would you say the most challenging system to work on, or most challenging job is in the 125 currently?
I really don't have. I really don't know. I haven't found something that's been that challenging yet.
Well, that's good.
So that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Can you go through flight times, weekly, daily flight times, and what that looks like? I'm sure there's some seasonality to that. I'm assuming there is a mosquito season in Florida. The Vertical MRO Podcast is powered by Vertical Magazine, the rotorcraft industry's #1 trusted multimedia resource. Visit Vertical Mag Media on YouTube to gain access to exclusive videos featuring operators in the field and more unique content from the pages of Vertical. Subscribe today to stay informed and inspired.
So we do have a mosquito season. Typically it runs from May through October or November. It just depends on how rainy things are.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we are kind of still in our dry season. So this, from roughly November through now, is when we would be doing most of our heavy maintenance. Bring down one bird and do all the work on that while maintaining the other bird for spraying, and then bring down the second bird as afterwards and work on that and have them ready roughly for May 1st, around there, for the mosquito season. Because once those rains start coming and we start getting more standing water, then the eggs that have been laid will start hatching out, and we try to catch them early. So a lot of our spraying, we have a dry spray system that we put on the aircraft, and there's a hopper on each side, and they will hold about 400 pounds of of dry chemical on each side. And typically we'll do about 800-pound load, so 400 each side. And my pilots will go out, they'll spray the chemical over swamps, over marshes, and try to catch the mosquito larvae before they develop into adults, because it's a lot easier to prevent them from becoming adults. And when I say chemical, what we actually spray is we call it BTI. It's a bacteria that is coated onto either a corncob base that's ground up, or a clay base, kind of like little clay balls, and they'll coat it with that bacteria, and we'll spray it over those water sources, and then the mosquito will ingest the bacteria, and that'll kill them. So we want to try to catch them early. Once they hatch off, then it's more difficult to be killing them.
Organic mosquito killers, huh?
It is organic.
That's the helicopters doing the job of mosquito eradication when you're flying around during regular season. All the windscreen and the aircraft itself.
Oh, yes. Probably kill more that way.
Go back to your flight times. What are you guys looking at for daily or weekly flight times?
For the season, for weekly during the season, you're probably looking about 20 hours a week. Could be less, it could be more. It just really depends on how rainy it is.
Right.
Especially with the hurricanes that we had last year that came up through here. We had a lot of standing water for a long time, and we were flying well into November, trying to keep up with it all. And
I'm interested from a technology standpoint. Are you guys utilizing any systems like shot over, the augmented reality systems to kind of help map the areas that have been sprayed and how often they're being sprayed?
So we don't use anything like shot over. We use what's called AgNav, and it's a system that was designed for the agricultural community and can be used for mosquito spraying as well, where my pilots, they'll put in what they call their polygons, which is going to be their treatment areas, and it'll lay out their swaths that they're going to be flying, and they just fly that as if they were going to be treating a cornfield or something. And it works out really well, and then that captures all the information that we have to record and report to the state, because anytime you're putting out any sort of pesticide, even though in our case, usually it's organic pesticides, it still has to be reported to the state that we've used so much product, and this is where we put it. Yeah, it's a very regulated industry.
Yeah.
I'm sure the community is also interested where you're flying, where that stuff is dropping. Obviously, I'm sure that you have Pasco County probably has ground-based mosquito spraying for the cities and so forth, but I'm sure there's some level of concern from some communities. So having this kind of software probably helps you really understand where we are and can prove that, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. And like you said, we do have ground trucks that will do spraying at night. We've got our technicians that will go out. They'll use backpack sprayers, and we have airboats that we can spray as well. But as far as for the aviation side, we use that AgNav. It gets uploaded. We do get regular public information requests. Where you've been flying, what kind of product have you been putting out, and all that information is right there. It can be easily promulgated out to the citizens.
Aside from the sprayers themselves and the system you're talking about that tracks your flight data, is there any other specialized mission equipment that you guys utilize to help you guys?
So really the only other specialized equipment we have is we do have liquid spray tanks as well. We've got a high volume system that we can use for putting out a liquid larvicide, and we actually used that for the first time last season because we did have some dengue fever outbreaks in a particular area. And the type of mosquito that is usually associated with dengue fever, they breed in kind of like dirty water, buckets, things like that, bird baths and whatnot. Not as much in the swamps and stuff. So we use the liquid larvicide to go over neighborhoods and actually put out product that way. And then we have an adulticide tank, which puts out an ultra low volume of a product called Dibrome is what we typically use for that. And my pilots will take off at night and they'll use NVGs. They'll both be on NVGs and fly at 300 feet and spraying in a grid pattern to kill the adult mosquitoes.
With the controls, with either the liquid or the ground based, do your pilots have to take any different precautions on rebreathing masks or anything like that, or did they cause any additional maintenance to the aircraft having to deal with that?
So that's great. As far as I'll start with our dry product that we use, dry larvicide. Our loading system we use for that is actually a large trailer mounted hopper system that we can bulk load thousands of pounds of the product into it. And then as my pilots come in, we'll do a hot turn. So with the rotors turning, we'll load them up with product. We've got a large hose, goes out to each hopper, you put it in, and it just puts in, 400 pounds at a time on each side. We'll hot gas them, send them out. That'll create a bunch of dust. So wearing your proper PPE, dust masks, eyeglasses, things like that, goggles, you want to wear that. And then for the liquid Dibrome, it's actually a very corrosive product. So we have to be very careful with how we load that. It's a closed loop system for loading, and pilots will shut down. We'll be out there. It looks like something out of, the CDC. You're in your full white Tyvek suit. You've got your rebreather on, all this stuff, thick old rubber gloves, and we'll load it up. And then that system we only use on one helicopter because of the corrosiveness, in case, anything that goes behind the helicopter, if it gets caught up in the rotor wash and whatnot, gets into the tail, or, we can more easily track that.
As far as post-flight maintenance after that's deployed, can you talk about any special considerations that come into play? Obviously just a visual inspection is probably part of that, but are you guys washing the aircraft after every flight, redeploying that substance? What does that look like?
Yeah, we definitely try to wash the aircraft after every flight with that. It won't be that night, but the next day.
Are you seeing any interesting side effects as far as corrosion goes from the use or deployment of that substance?
Not yet, no.
Awesome.
Which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah. You brought up dirty water, and it's one of those things that's really interesting to me. Being at Ontario, we partner with our local vector control every spring, and they'd ask us to fly around and note dirty pools, really green pools, and we'd take those findings and send them to them. And I'm assuming they do what you're describing with probably the backpacks going there and treat the dirty pools and cite the folks that have those. I did not realize how many dirty pools existed in a given location until I started paying attention to it in flight. There's a lot, and it's really gross. You see pools that are neon green, like the color of Ronnie and I's shirts, and you're like, holy cow. There has to be some, aside from mosquitoes, there has to be some nasty health consequences for having that next to your house. It's amazing.
One of the things that our techs will do is they'll actually take mosquito fish and put them in those pools. So just small little, I don't even know what type of fish they are. We just call them mosquito fish. They're just maybe about an inch long, and they just eat the larvae
Wow.
So
I never knew that.
We've got a large pond back here that, they grow in, and we've got a couple large containers that we grow them in, and they'll take them out with them and put them in that type of water. It's more effective than actually treating with an insecticide.
Yeah. And cycle of life.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Safe Structure Designs offers creative, customizable ergonomic safety solutions with over 20 years of experience. Their custom design process is free, ensuring safety and efficiency. Let them create your ideal solution. Visit www.safe-2.com. That's www.safe-2.com for more information. The Vertical MRO Podcast is powered by Vertical Magazine, the rotorcraft industry's #1 trusted multimedia resource. Visit Vertical Mag Media on YouTube to gain access to exclusive videos featuring operators in the field and more unique content from the pages of Vertical. Subscribe today to stay informed and inspired. Thank you for joining us for this enlightening two-part series on the Vertical MRO Podcast, proudly presented by Vertical HeliCASTS and in partnership with Vertical Magazine. During this two-part series, we've had the pleasure of exploring the impressive journey of Nelson Reithmaier, the Chief of Maintenance for Pasco County Mosquito Control in Florida. From his foundational experiences as an aviation maintenance technician in the Coast Guard to his current pivotal role, Nelson shared critical insights into the unique challenges of maintaining aircraft in demanding environments. We've heard about the innovative strategies deployed during hurricane operations, the vital role of aviation and public health missions, and the advanced technology aiding in mosquito eradication. This discussion on community engagement and the importance of networking at events like the Vertical MRO Conferences reminds us that collaboration is key to advancing our industry. Stay tuned for our next episodes where we continue to bring you more fascinating conversations and insights from the MRO community. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please like, subscribe, and share the Vertical MRO Podcast. Thank you for listening. We look forward to connecting with you next time on the Vertical MRO Podcast.